So instead of doing that, what's important is to create a kind of big mothership essay, which you can swap bits in and out of during the actual essay, which remains flexible in terms of its concepts in terms of its related materials, and in terms of its set text. It's important to create an essay with very open themed concepts. So what concepts are we thinking about at the moment, guys? Things like familial belonging, belonging to institutions, cultural connections. Okay, but build me up a thesis. Build me up the concept. I don't want just two terms. I want, what does cultural belonging, how does cultural belonging impact on us as a person? Does a sense of belonging, a sense of affinity to a culture help define our identity? How does it do that? It provides security, comfort, a foundation to which we base our sense of security. We gain a collective identity by all belonging to one culture. It's important when you're building these concepts, and I'm not here today to help you build these concepts, but it's important when you do by yourself that you make sure that these concepts are very complex. Because belonging, unlike the modules, I believe, is quite a unique subject. The fact that it's been done for 5 years by everyone means that there's an abundance of resources. Everyone is aware of what belonging is and how to explore it. On the flip side, everyone's done it. So the markers, so your responses really have to stand out, really have to be different. Your concepts really have to be complex in order to appeal to these markers. And what that provides us is a unique opportunity in which to really hammer forward our ideas of belonging, which I'm going to share with you today. Complexity of ideas. I have a few ideas which you could possibly incorporate into your concepts in order to make your understanding as well as your essay better. So I'll be posting these up tonight, but it would be, I shouldn't have said that. If you guys could just start, take on board if you want. So the first thing in relation to the concept and thesis and nature of belonging is to not lionize or demonize the interrelationships between belonging and not belonging. I know that a lot of us complain that Shinesky only talks about not belonging, but it's important that we move beyond that assumption and we explore the opportunities that our belonging and not belonging can present us. So in a way, both perceptions of connections offer different values, processes, and impulses for the individuals to either accept or challenge their current situations. For example, belonging, as we know, may constitute a sense of familiarity, a sense of connectedness, a sense of security, but can also prevent, personal autonomy, individuality through its conformity. And this is one of the big debates, in belonging, is the debate between conformity and individuality. Whether belonging in an organization or in a group establishes a sense of identity and belonging, and whether or not that's great enough to warrant you staying within that, or to build your own individual identity outside of that group. Counterwise, not belonging invokes obviously a sense of loneliness, disconnectedness, and a depression, but can also force individuals to pursue a truer, more organic form of belonging by undergoing a process of introspection, self-reflection, and embarking on a journey in order to gain a truer understanding of what belonging is. Maybe moving from a state where you belong by wearing the same uniform or learning the same curriculum in a school to really developing your own persona, individuality amongst friends or others who may not necessarily be in the same institution, but understand belonging as a more complex thing. Second of all, belonging is a continual process. And this is, I think, actually one of the questions that was raised in that pink sheet that we got about past essay topics. Belonging is dynamic, it's never-ending, and it's constantly evolving as individuals shape themselves to shifting social and familial contexts. It's important to recognize that change is a critical component to belonging, because it can shape our sense of belonging.
So you're putting this document up.
But that doesn't excuse you guys from not writing it down. You guys should. I don't know. Like, just enjoy listening. But as always, as we know, there's always a flip side to these statements. Certain forms of belonging, such as connections to the past, as we know through postcard and ancestors, will always remain important and significant throughout an individual's life, as we know. Thirdly, belonging involves a degree of choice as well as circumstance. Individuals can choose to pursue their own search for a deeper sense of belonging, or can agree to accept the state that they are currently in. And the thing about belonging is that it involves active navigation by the individual as they attempt to reach a truer sense of what belonging is. And a lot of the time the individual must choose to undergo this process, and that in itself is potentially an interesting theme that you could explore in your creative writings. It's just about the individual having to choose to embark on this journey. Fourthly, belonging is shaped by context. I know that this is no way supposed to be Module A, because you guys did Module A yesterday, but belonging is always shaped by our personal, by our cultural, by our social circumstances. And this can help better examine what our texts are saying. The fact that Shinetsky is experiencing a migrant context, living in Australia, being dislocated from his Polish past, as well as maybe some cultural aspects of Australia, can help better translate what Shinetsky is trying to say to us as individuals. And this is important because you need to have at least one or two sentences introducing the context of each text in your essay, maybe in the beginning, maybe throughout the essay, in order to tell the markers what the text is about. And even though they will probably know what text you're writing about, it's significant enough that you include words like migrant experience, cultural dislocation throughout the essay in order for you to base your ideas of not belonging on. Fifthly, I think this is relevant to what Tony said before. You need to include what you've learned from the module in a powerful final statement or conclusion which will differ from other responses. And this relates, I guess, to that module point that belonging in this module is all about what you've learned and what these texts have taught you about belonging. So even a sentence like, thus by exploring the differing representations of people, relationships and events within context and within medium, the very nature of belonging has been enriched and enhanced, developed as a multifaceted, complex process which individuals must choose to embark on in order to challenge or accept their circumstances. You need this last two sentences to be really punchy to sum up what belonging is as a whole and how it may have changed your understanding throughout the module. Sixthly, this is, is there even a sixthly in the vocabulary? Generalizations. And this is a big problem that a lot of us have, I noticed in the trials. You have to be very specific with what you're trying to say. I think one of the best examples of this is, quote, alienation is essential for a sense of belonging. What's wrong with this statement, guys? Alienation is essential for belonging.
It's not specific.
It's not specific, exactly. Like, it doesn't explore how alienation can impact on our sense of belonging, what type of belonging, how individuals move from this state of alienation to a sense of belonging. And that's why it's important to change these sentences. So maybe, for example, the idea that alienation is essential for a sense of belonging is explored in. And to really relate what the text is about to what you're trying to say overall about belonging in general. You're supporting your statement with evidence and specifying a particular experience of alienation by doing this. For example, the idea that alienation is essential for a sense of belonging is explored in Shinetsky's physical and cultural disconnection to his Polish culture, conflictingly enriches his knowledge of the power of connections to one's past. So it's important to build up these sentences that are more specific and more complex through that. Now, moving on to the problem of shaping your essay to the question. Like I mentioned before, it's important to have an essay that you can swap different parts out, different techniques, and to be able to insert the keywords and the key parts and aspects of the question throughout. First of all, don't be afraid to challenge the question. Because it's important whenever you're writing an essay to present, I guess, both sides of the conflict. One example, I suppose. A person's sense of belonging is often determined by the way they perceive themselves. A lot of the time, these questions are built so that you can argue the alternate side of this thing. A person's sense of belonging is often determined by the way they perceive themselves, or how others perceive them as individuals. So it's important that you base your concepts by challenging and by exploring these concepts more in depth. However, to an extent, you have to be aware to not completely disagree with the question at the same time. So you just have to establish a useful dialectic between these two arguments to be able to create an effective thesis that accounts for both sides. Secondly, there is often more than one way to approach an essay question. The trials question that we did this year was both positive and negative experiences shape our sense of belonging. Albert, how did you approach this question? How did you shape the question into your concepts? Okay, that's all right. Kevin, I know you did well. How did you shape it?
I just did positive experiences in one for each poem, and then contrast that to the negative.
Why is positive and negative so important?
Well, I guess it's
Like, is it alright to focus on one aspect of it?
yeah, it's the question, but also the fact that you can gain different understandings through both bad and good. Like I said before, not belonging can develop your desire to understand more about belonging and how to achieve belonging, whereas belonging obviously is inherently important. And you also have to be aware of the transition between belonging and achievement. So I suppose with this question, both negative and positive experiences, you can perhaps rotate one concept to positive and one concept to negative, or in both concepts you can both explore positive and negative. There's a lot of different ways of approaching these questions, and it's all about using that planning time, that first 5 minutes, to really tailor your response to the question. And finally, how do you guys answer the question in your essays? Do you just try to stick in keywords like positive and negative experiences throughout the entire thing? Topic sentences and summing up sentences? Yeah. So I think in the feedback sheet, it's important to not only include a topic sentence, but also a summing up sentence at the end of each paragraph. And then this can, I guess, not only create a circular structure to your essay points, but also, address the question once you've finished it as well as the start. Also ensure that you answer the question within the body of the paragraph. Often it's not good enough just to mention the keywords in the topic sentence or the concluding sentence. You need to integrate these words into your response. For example, so this is our negative sense of belonging. Shinesky's portrayal of his persona's cultural disconnection from Warsaw, the process exacerbated by physical and generational distancing, as he adapts to his migrant experience in Australia, signifies how indeed negative experiences of dislocation, born out of contextual circumstances, impact on our sense of belonging to one's past. And by including things like negative experience, impact on our sense of belonging, within the actual sub-points of your paragraph, it seems more natural as well as integrates the question a lot better into your response. Related material. How many of you think, or how many of you have prepared 2 related materials?
1.5.
Yeah, 1.5. That's
Would it
quite a
be
lot
a
of
good
you.
idea to get like a really dense picture for your second related
The dense.
picture, like a picture with an image with lots of concepts and ideas and stuff like that.
If you can analyze it properly, yeah. Just make sure that it has Okay, guys. Guys, as you probably know, the border study can technically specify you to write on two related texts, but they have not been doing that in the past few years. Having said that, it's important, obviously, to prepare a second related material. Now, interestingly, I know Jacob mentioned 1.5, and the rest of you mentioned 2. Obviously, you need to prepare one related material. You need one related material, obviously. But the way that Jacob approaches it is that his second related text, he only writes one paragraph for that. And then that can easily be subbed in for the first related material if it comes up in the question, right, Jacob?
Yep.
That's the process.
So if you have two, like if it's size 2 related, you probably do like inter, total 1, related 1, go to related 2.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the process. Can I ask the people who are doing 2 related materials, how are you doing that? Are you just creating one essay and then 2 more paragraphs you can sub it? I guess both processes are fine. If you're running short of time, maybe only one. But by preparing your related material for both concepts, you're able to swap in that second related material for both concepts to better suit the question. Put your hand up if you're doing a film. Or you're related. Any of them. YouTube video. YouTube video, sure. Hand up if you're doing a novel.
Short story.
Short story.
Short film.
Poem. Short film. A play.
Picture book.
Picture book. Huh?
Seminal, like,
yeah.
seminal presentation.
That counts. So I guess how many of you are also doing an article? Are any of you doing an article? Newspaper report, that kind of stuff.
Just use one of those. One's from like
And you guys are all trying to do 2 different related materials, medium-wise, right? How many of you at the moment are doing maybe 2 films or 2 short stories or 2 poems? None of you. That's good. Okay, so yeah, like Sean said on the Facebook wall, it's important not to choose 2 related materials that are the same text type, because that could, I guess, really hinder the way that the market perceives your Sorry, Vincent. How many of you brought your essays? Because this is what's so exciting about today. Digital, sure. Are you guys comfortable with maybe sharing your essay with the person next to you? Or going through with someone else? Do a bit of peer marking?
Short